September 5, 2019 at 5:48 a.m., Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers Vasquez and Campbell initiated a traffic stop of Byron Williams for a minor traffic infraction. 2 hours later, Byron Williams was pronounced dead by officials at Valley Hospital.
Metro Police, fucking stop! Fucking stop! Get off the fucking thing! Go, hop the wall, hop the wall. He's going northbound by Building K. Get on the ground! He's still going northbound. Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get your hand out of there.
Officers as a whole don't respect black life. Officers as a whole do not care if we are dead or in jail.
My daddy is gone.
I worry about my son every time he gets in the car, right? So I am crystal clear about the dynamic that exists, and whether or not it's real in Nevada. I think we have a fear in our minds that black men or black boys may not come home.
Well, if the video shows that there was something intentionally done, or if the video shows that there has been, an improper action by the officer, our district attorney will need to take action, immediate action, to file those charges. And there is a process in place for that. As a state lawmaker, our role is to make the law. It is our role to make sure that we work during the interim to see how the law is going to be implemented through the regulatory process. So, with your question, yes, we make the law for it to be followed.
It seems to be, not that it's factual, but it seems to be, or we see a lot more African Americans dying at the hands of police.
Statistically, from Metro, the numbers suggest that they're doing a wonderful job. Statistically, I was in a meeting, and the numbers suggest that this is a very unfortunate incident, and it's a rarity. However, one is too many.
On September 9th, 2019, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department held a press conference to notify the media regarding the in-custody death of Byron Williams.
Williams's California criminal history includes taking a vehicle without owner's consent, multiple arrests; possession of controlled substance, multiple arrests; under the influence of controlled substance, multiple arrests; theft; possession of controlled substance paraphernalia; trespass; receiving stolen property, multiple arrests; purchase for sale of narcotics; transporting, sell narcotics, controlled substance; patrol violation, multiple arrests; grand theft auto; torture; robbery; sexual penetration, foreign object with force; possession of cocaine, multiple arrests; obstructing a public officer; battery on a peace officer; DUI, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
Assistant Sheriff Charles Hanks alluded to Byron Williams' lengthy criminal history during the initial press conference regarding the in-custody death. To what ends were these details released?
The electronic monitoring, and basically what happened is he had failed to check in on the 29th. He had not charged his ankle bracelet, which he still had on when we took him into custody. The officers that manage our house arrest process was in the process of getting with a judge to get an arrest warrant to bring him back into custody. So he was being treated, he was viewed as an absconder, and we would have been out looking for him anyway to pick him up.
Assistant Sheriff Hank advised that as of August 29, 2019, he, Byron Williams was viewed as an absconder, and we, the CCDC electronic monitoring program, would have been out looking for him anyway to pick him up. As of Thursday, September 5th, 2019 at 5:48 a.m., how far along in the process were officers in obtaining a warrant for his arrest? Were officers Benjamin Vasquez and Patrick Campbell aware of his status?
Get cuffs, I got his hands up. Get cuffs. Get cuffs. I can't breathe. Yeah, because you're fucking tired of running. Okay, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Can't breathe. 1 VC 71, code 4, lift the red, 1 in custody. Can't breathe. Can't breathe.
The suspect repeatedly advised, "I can't breathe." One of the arresting officers responded, "Yeah, because you are fucking tired from running." Why was there a delay of 2 minutes and 33 seconds for medical to be called?
5:48 to initiate the stop. We had a code red at 5:49. At 5:51, we broadcast code 4 that he was taken into custody, so that has us running just under 2 minutes right there. At 5:52, our officer broadcast. That's when he broadcast no force was used. He was complying. And at 5:54, medical was requested. And we first have body-worn camera footage of medical engaging him at 6:08.
According to the timeline offered by Assistant Sheriff Hank, at 5:54 a.m., medical was summoned and he first began receiving treatment at 6:08 a.m. by City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue. How does the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department account for the 14-minute time frame between dispatch and arrival?
No, let me be clear. There's several officers that respond to this event. There's numerous body-worn cameras that were activated during this event. All of that has to be evaluated. There will be a complete investigation. There'll be interviews of those officers to evaluate if their camera was deactivated at the appropriate or inappropriate time. So it's premature for me to comment on whether or not those officers deactivated their cameras inappropriately or if it was deactivated appropriately. So there will be a complete investigation. Each camera will be reviewed. Each officer will be interviewed to determine if all of their actions regarding the use, activation, and deactivation of their cameras was appropriate.
Members of the Williams family, as well as several elected officials and community leaders, have been allowed to view the footage from 7 body-worn cameras. Why has the footage not been released to the general public?
The narrative was given to the public. So, and the way that the footage was presented, it dehumanized him. You know, it made him look like a criminal. It made him look like a drug addict. It made him look like all these things except a black man.
They can say what they want about my dad. His past was his past. My dad moved out here last year from July, 4th of July. And he's been trying to stay out of trouble ever since. He's been with my mom ever since. It's not fair for someone to take your past and throw it out there and make it seem like you deserve to die because of it. Come on.
But your point was to assassinate his character in the public to justify the fact that maybe he deserved to die, in your opinion?
Force Trajectory Project is a media organization, grassroots, independent. We are a staff of volunteer multimedia journalists. So in the Byron Williams case, it was a perfect storm. The family members of Byron Williams were able to see the body cam footage Saturday morning. How they were informed was through an eyewitness that hasn't yet been identified, who was on scene when Byron expired and was apprehended. This eyewitness contacted the family, let them know what happened. The family responded by calling the coroner's office, confirming that Williams was there. Then the Force Investigations team contacted them, invited them to see the body cam footage. Then Jeffrey Tompkins, the stepson of Byron, wrote a Facebook status about what happened. We have mutual friends. Vegas is a small town. One of our mutual friends tagged me because he knew I do this work. And that's how I got in contact with the family. Now, amazingly enough, Metro did not report this in custody death for over 100 hours, right? They didn't announce it until 3 p.m. Monday. That gave us the opportunity as a media organization to respond immediately. And so we did. And we did that because we know that getting the family's narrative out first is so important. Because if you don't get to it first, what ends up happening is the police have first dibs on the narrative. And that's why on Monday at 3 p.m. during the press briefings, you have journalists asking, well, we know that the body cam was turned off. We spoke to the family, and they were challenging the assistant sheriff, which normally he doesn't really get challenged that much because they have first dibs on the narrative. So how does it happen? Now, our work is easier because of social media. We're able to find people through, everybody's grandma is on Facebook, right? And so people are emoting more often. So this is a really, in regards to police brutality, this is a really prime time for the community stories and voices to emerge in this particular social issue. So in general, when there's community action, things can actually happen, right? So a great example is the case of Oscar Grant. A lot of people are familiar with this case. Fruitvale Station was a Hollywood feature film that was created by the Black Panther director, Ryan Coogler. When Oscar Grant was killed, it was an anomaly because so many people were there and so many people were proactive and recorded it, right? And so when they recorded it and they didn't just hide it, they actually released it and they let everybody see it. It went viral on YouTube. That's when the community, that was just the beginning, right? And because if he had been killed, 2 years earlier and there were no flip phones with video cameras or whatever, this would have just been covered up immediately. But because the family was so willing for the community to work with them, and both ways, right? They were able to work with the unions over there to shut down the ports of San Francisco, which then messed with the economy. Direct action is what led to the indictment of Officer Johannes Messerly, who was a BART police officer who killed Oscar Grant. And if it wasn't for the community willing to show solidarity by shutting down the ports, using direct action, blocking traffic, things like that, that wouldn't have happened. And they were persistent throughout the trial, which is the reason why it ended up in a conviction. I think body camera footage is really important. I think civilians as witnesses with cameras is also really important. The problem with the body cam is that immediately it goes directly back to the police, right? And so there still is an issue of transparency. So they could deny that maybe their cameras weren't turned on, or like in this case with Byron Williams, they just turned it on, all of them turned it off for some reason in the middle of this arrest. And then Williams subsequently was, expiring in that moment when they turned off the cameras. So the fact that the body cam is still in the hands of the police is a problem. When you have journalists reporting on police brutality narratives, there's quite a bit of intimidation that comes with working with the police. And so, especially here in this town, you see how they cherry pick journalists in their press briefings. A lot of people aren't allowed to be in those press briefings. It depends on who you are, who you write for. So if you're cherry picking journalists, your pool of journalists are already, they're the same pool of journalists already. It's a homogenous group of yes men, right, that are not going to challenge the police because their fear is that they won't be allowed in the room, right? So where's the impartiality of reporting? And so what we find is that the marginalized voices become the community. The marginalized voices that aren't heard becomes the family, the impacted family, the community members around where this incident happened, and sometimes, and even eyewitnesses. So even eyewitnesses are considered alternative sources to the media. And so who is heard the most, and I'm saying like 95, 99% of the time, are the authorities, elected officials, police department, the district attorney. And so the narrative is completely controlled by the institution, and that's the reason why we do our work.
So my name is Minister Stretch Sanders. I became a minister in 2014. That same year is when I got involved in social activism. I studied the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, Marcus Garvey. I consider myself a mixture. If it was a gumbo of those revolutionaries, that would produce Minister Stretch Sanders. I did run for mayor this last municipal election, and the beautiful thing about that was it got me to be more open-minded to using the political arena as another tool for social justice. But what I saw was a lot of people who are forced to compromise, a lot of folks who are scared to speak on issues like Byron Williams. And so I'm hoping that we have other elected officials, other preachers, other young people who prove a lot of my statements wrong by just being a voice for social change. Yes, so I woke up, and the next day, that Friday, I got on Facebook and I saw a few different shares of different like statuses of a man being killed. They were saying a man was killed by Metro. And so I'm like, it was early, I didn't really process it. A few hours later, I got an inbox from one of the relatives who happens to be the stepson of Byron Williams, asking me if I can get involved in the case from a community activist point of view as far as bringing awareness to the case. And so I took some time to research the situation to see what had happened. And so one of my other comrades, who's also a journalist, did a story with the family. She sent me the story and then said we will collaborate to bring forth a protest and a press conference on behalf of the community and the family and lead. And I didn't know how much of the story was exposed to the general public yet because it was still an investigation. But basically we got enough to determine that this man was innocently riding a bike. He was stopped for a bike light being out, almost like a stop and frisk. And almost an hour later, he's dead. I got involved 2 years ago with one of the most popular cases in Las Vegas with Tashi Brown Farmer, who was a young man who came to the Metro Police Department for help on the Strip and was then chased by them, tased several times, punched, and then choked out. And at the Strip at the Venetian, he died. When I saw that situation, I reached out to the family. Typically, I get involved in two ways. The family contacts me, a third party, like a friend or somebody in the community contacts me, or if I see there's been no real word or no contact, I'll research the family and find a family member to do some type of organizing with. And so with Tashi Brown Farmer, we organized one of the largest protests in Vegas, had about 200 people, and 120 of us got in the street in front of the Venetian and blocked traffic. The result of that, 9 of us out of that 100 was arrested, and we sat in jail for 10 to 12 hours. We was released the following day, and 2 days later, we held a press conference, and that night we got word that the officers were both arrested and fired. And so I'm a firm believer in community activism as far as direct action, civil disobedience. We say no justice, no peace, but then we don't get no justice. We still have not brought forth any non-peaceful demonstrations. And by non-peaceful, I don't mean that we have to have weapons, but just raising some noise, raising awareness, shaking the foundation. We say if we don't get justice, we don't shut it down, and we don't shut nothing down. And so I'm a believer that we may have to disrupt some businesses. We may have to block some traffic. We got to make people uncomfortable to have these uncomfortable conversations. When we are being literally killed, terrorized, whether it's by gun, by hand, by excessive force, by negligence, we cannot sit and act like this is not affecting not just people of color, but white people and the human family, and just act like it's not happening. In Las Vegas, it's more of a swept under the rug thing because Metro presents themselves as being the model form for police departments across the country. I don't care how good you are as an agency, if you still have officers on your department and policies that still oppress Black and brown and poor people, you are no model reform. You are the same like these other police departments, which in so many regards, a gang. You are an organized gang that have power to take and give life off this earth and life to prison. And so my job as a revolutionary organizer is to bring awareness to that. And from Tashi Brown Farmer, from Keith Childress Jr., all the way down to Byron Williams, for the last 6-7 years, that's been my take on it, to bring awareness. I believe and know that if we raise enough noise and shake the foundation, make folks uncomfortable, make folks afraid, it will change some things. We think we have to just vote our way through, we gotta just petition our way through. And yes, those two opportunities can create and build a path for us that brings forth justice, but if we're silent with those pleas, silent with those demands, nothing's gonna get done. My father was a police officer for the Chicago Police Department for 30 years, from 1987 to 2017. I grew up around police officers my whole life due to my father, and I never really took that in consideration when I got involved in activism, because I felt like what I was doing was not disrespecting the police officers. What I was doing was holding those accountable who are disrespecting people who are innocently trying to live their lives. And so when I got arrested, I sent my father the picture that was on the front page of the Las Vegas Review-Journal of me being hauled off in handcuffs. His response to me was, "I'm proud of you, son." I think it's because when he saw that picture, he knew that I was not being hauled off because I was out here hurting our people.
The role that the church has played in the civil rights movement has been to be the voice of God, the hands of God, the arms of God. We have the responsibility of being able to say to any government, whether it's a dictatorship or a democracy, we have the response, or monarchy, we have the responsibility of saying to them, what thus saith the Lord. And so if government is going astray, if there's inappropriate behavior, inappropriate activity, inappropriate laws, the church has been the one to speak and to say that God is displeased with this, or that God is pleased if it's going in the right direction. God usually selects a prophet. That prophet has the responsibility of knowing the heart of God, the voice of God, and the message of God. And he takes that heart of God and message of God and he speaks it to the powers that be. So, for example, in the Old Testament, there was a nation that was going amok under the leadership of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. And God raised up a prophet, Elijah, and he raised that prophet up to go speak to Ahab and Jezebel and to tell them that God is not pleased with the way that you're treating people in the nation, and that there was going to be a consequence as a result of the fact that there was that mistreatment. So the role of the church has been to communicate the voice of God, to communicate the direction of God to an organization, to a country, or to a set of laws that have gone astray. You know, the issue for today has been that, as I've said on many occasions, that there's no accountability, that police officers seem to have the freedom to behave inappropriately in the streets, and there's no accountability. Seldom do they go to court. When they go to court, they're usually exonerated, and the whole nation is erupting in anger because of what we see on the videos and what we hear from the individuals who were involved, if they are alive to tell it. Make no mistake about it, the African American community has no problem with African Americans or any other American that breaks the law going to jail or suffering punishment as a result of that infraction. What we don't want is for the police officer to become the judge and jury in the street and to make what's been happening so frequently, to allow that to continue to happen. So we build relationships with law enforcement, and I must say that here at our church we have a good relationship with the sheriff. We have a good relationship with some of the undersheriffs and some of the police officers. The frustrating thing for me is that good relationship doesn't always translate in the street when the officers are encountering people from my community. There are many churches that are active in agitation and protestation. There are many churches that are active in that. And there are people that are dedicated to protesting and agitation. And I do think that there's a place for protest and agitation. I just don't think that every place in every incident is the place for protest and agitation. Nor do I think that protest and agitation should be the first step.
Even with this particular case, I'm questioning myself right now as to how much more I should be doing as a social activist, to the point where I'm starting to introduce myself as such on Sunday mornings to my congregation, so they will understand that I know I'm being led in that direction, and I need to do more. I need to make more trips to Carson City. I can't say I'm fighting for my people and I don't make trips to Carson City. I have to work into my schedule more meetings with not just officers, but with the sheriffs, with elected officials. I need to be at more community, not so much roundtables, but our town hall meetings. And I need to make sure that I'm not just the pastor people see in the pulpit, but I'm the pastor people see on the steps of City Hall. Well, I feel right now we're in a day and time, we're in a season, if you will, where we need to make sure our voice is heard. I think we've taken a back seat to being at the forefront when it comes to civil rights. It's almost as if we became too comfortable in believing that we had arrived, but current events are showing us that we still have much work to do. And I believe that the people have a right to still look for leadership to come from the pulpit. I believe people have a right to look for us to be the gatekeepers for our cities and to have those meetings and to have relationships with people in high places. And so this is another moment for us as religious leaders to really stand on the forefront and allow our voices to be heard. I appreciate the fact that I'm in relationship, so that way we can gain facts. I have a working relationship, one where we can discuss what can be discussed within the parameters of the law. I like to have those meetings so that way I can effectively communicate not only with my congregation, but with the community, so that we can make sure we're also following the law in our protests, in our expressions of concern and frustration. I appreciate the fact that we do have Black elected officials, political officials, who are working to respond and to adopt and develop and pass laws to make sure justice is being served for them.
Well, I think that there was a time when the religious community was the NAACP. It was predominantly ran by pastors. So that's really the true history of the NAACP. If I'm speaking candidly now, no, that is not the case. I don't have the full support of the religious community. And I think that I would implore you to maybe speak to some of them and ask them that question, why? But I do have the support of some. But is it enough? No, it is not enough. They have whole congregations of which they speak to on any given Sunday. But we got to stop operating in independent silos and feeling like I got to be the only chief on the block. And that if it's not coming from me, then I don't want to be a part of it. Because it's going to take us all, and it's not about one voice, it's about all of our voices saying the same thing. It was the NAACP in partnership with the ACLU that fought to have the body cameras implemented in the state of Nevada to begin with. So we've always been at the forefront of having policy changed or new policies implemented into that department. And so with that being said, we were, like I said, on the ground floor of getting the body cameras implemented. But then not just having them implemented now, then you start seeing, okay, it's not just enough to have body cameras in place, because there's a lot of policies and procedures that have to go along with it. And I think that that's going to be an evolution, that's going to be in continuous change, because what you think works, it might work until there's an incident that shows you it doesn't work. Use of force is still very prevalent here. I think that Metro is open to admitting the fact that there is a problem. I think that no one can deny that there is a problem with that. But these have been problems that have been long-standing for such a long time. And we want the change, but the change is not going to come overnight. So I do feel that they are listening because people are demanding that they listen. And they're demanding that they change the way they're doing things. And so I think that over time, again, unfortunately, when an incident occurs, we get to see where all the flaws are in any system, and it gives us opportunity for change. And one of the things that I can say I appreciate now is that there was a time when they were very resistant to change. But I do find that they are opening up a little bit more. They're willing to sit at the table, admit their faults, and start working on the change that they want to see, as well as we as a community want to see. Because we all want our cities to be better for everybody, not just for the citizens, but the police want to be better, and they want their community of policing to be better as well.
I think the first thing is to look at the their incident policy, which is when they can cut the body cam off. They also have a policy of what they can redact out of the actual body cam footage, and I don't think we have clarity around when they can and whether or not it fits into what we have as our public law around open. It's kind of like, I don't know if it falls under open meeting law or not, but there is a sense of public knowledge that is associated with the body cam. But I think we need to look at the redactment policy for sure, what can be eliminated, and then what is the state policy around when you can delete and when you can turn off the body cam.
And I would agree. As stated, here in the state of Nevada, we've gone and tried to do as much as we can to provide accountability, transparency, and number 3, accessibility. Beginning in the 2017 legislative session, and it was a bill that we actually all co-sponsored. It was a Senate bill number 176, which the primary sponsor was our Attorney General Aaron Ford. He was then our Senate Majority Leader, and that bill came about because of a lot of the national dialogue around transparency and also accessibility as it related to body cams. But as you stated, and as Assemblywoman Neal stated, that we do have an opportunity to take a further dive into what are the policies and procedures that are in place, what needs to be taken a second look at, and how can we look at that language, tighten it up a little bit to account for more transparency and more accessibility to the general public.
But before even looking at the policy, we have to look at where's the problem lying. Each incident has to be handled as an individual incident, not just as a group as a whole. But seeing what went wrong in that incident will let you know, or what did not go right, where changes need to happen. You can't just go into the legislative session and say, we're going to make this change and make that blanket change that's going to cover everything. I think we need to look at individual incidents that have happened. We're only in session every other year, so you have that 18 months in between that things might happen in the community to look at collectively all of those incidents and find out specifically what those changes need to be going back into the legislative session, if that makes sense.
But I think there needs to be clarity around what is the end of an incident. I don't think it's clear for the officers of I don't know if it's up to their discretion or when the policy kicks in, but this is solely my opinion. that in the incident that was described to us, if he started to have a medical emergency, to me, the body cam should have been on before the EMTs arrived, not the absence of. And I don't know when that occurred because I didn't see the video yet. I requested to see the video, but I haven't seen it yet.
We should definitely take a look at how do we define the completion of an investigation. Right now, as stated by my colleagues, that there is a bit of we're still trying to identify when the investigation is considered to be complete. That's what we don't have clarity around. And now that we have this incident, which we hope is an isolated incident, and we don't have any more in our city, we can now take a look at what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and how do we respond to that, as lawmakers and policy makers, and also working with the department to identify where we can make improvements.
Veteran officers on patrol still have to wear a body cam. It's officers that do not have quote unquote contact with the public. If you're not on patrol, if you're sitting behind a desk, which a veteran officer might be because they've been promoted and they have a different title, so they're more in a supervisory position, and that camera may be in the vehicle if they have to go to a scene. But if you're behind a desk, there's really no need for that person to have on a camera. But for those officers that do have direct contact with the public, the way the law was written, they are to have on a body camera no matter what their seniority is.
Right, so apparently there's several videos because there are several officers that had cameras. And so when I requested it last week, they said that I would be able to see it after the investigation was over. I know that the family is pushing that the public see exactly the same video that they saw. And I talked to them, and what they described was everybody is aware of, I think it's just a 12-minute lag in the video or something where it's just, there's nothing. But then he was saying that there were staggered moments that seemed like everybody's camera had a time lag. And he wanted clarification around where did the time lag come from. If everybody's camera was on and they were all present, why is there a time lag? And so the allegation is that there was editing. I don't know that. I haven't seen it. I asked to see it, and they said after the investigation was complete.
I believe it's important just for accountability purposes. I think it's important for also transparency purposes. Oftentimes when there is something that is not seen or is not brought forward in a timely manner, the first thing that you think about as a common citizen is that what are they hiding? So I don't believe that no one is happy with this situation. It is important that we make sure that we operate as a state in the most transparent way as possible to provide accountability to the officers who are the supervisor in charge, but also if there was something done that's nefarious, we have to make sure that we address it. And no one is wrong when they ask for more transparency. Transparency is a good thing.
I would like to attribute our success to training. We do a lot of extensive additional training beyond what the department requires or beyond what post requires. So we do have a lot of reality-based training that we do in addition to every quarter. We do have road shows and tabletops that we do every week. And a lot of those things discuss proper application of force. A lot of things discuss how to implement less lethal force. And the last option is deadly force. And I'd like to think that that is a direct result of the fruit of our labor. We preach it every day. We impress upon newer officers, and I don't know if you know this or not, but Bolden Area Command is a field training facility. We have 6 field training squads that are assigned to our area command. But from day one when they land here at Bolden Area Command, we impress upon them our goals and philosophies. And we have goals and philosophies specific to our station that we, our officers, our leadership, have developed ourselves. So I'd like to think that that's a direct result of the extra effort and education and training that we provide them. the last option is deadly force, the very last option. So I'd like to see everything used before we get there. Make no mistakes that community members in our area command want to see the police, especially when they're plagued with violent crime. So in Summerlin, if you can show me an intersection that has had, let's just say, over 237 calls for service, they're going to demand the police be present. And so likewise, when that happens here at Golden Area Command, we will have police presence because the community demands it. And we have a service that we have to provide. When we talk about, hey, are stops different in Summerlin than they are in Golden Area Command, we respond with threats. We respond to the demands and the requests of community members that call my phone directly, and especially when we see violent crime numbers and spikes and violent crime incidences that occur. And because of our presence and because we're there, because we're doing these stops, we do have some benefits and rewards that we've had experienced. Now, you mentioned the officer-involved shootings, but I mean, I'd also like to highlight that in 2017, we had 22 homicides. In 2018, we had 18 homicides. And year to date, I'm sitting on 9. And I'm knocking on wood, and I'll tell you that I cringe when I say that because I know that can change tomorrow. But there was a lot of work that went into policing and how we police and being where the community wants us to be, where they demand us to be. And I believe that's, again, I have to hand it to the officers, that is an absolute direct reflection of the work that we're doing. But I tell you that, you know, the community as a whole has a right to ask all and any questions. We are exposed, we have nothing to hide, we are very transparent as an organization. We are a growing organism, if you will. Our policies always change. You know, as you know, a few years ago, our agency volunteered to have the Department of Justice review our force policies, all of our policies. And they then returned with 75 recommendations that I gotta challenge you, find another organization that's more transparent.
You can't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining.
The Bolton Little League is a league which is actual through National Little League, and Mario is the president and I'm the vice president. It was started 3 years. We're on our 3rd year now. It started so the kids on the historic West Side can play baseball in a real league. It's the best part about the league is that they don't have to pay any money to be a part of the league. The kids over here on the West Side, 90% of our kids in the league are from public housing. They can't afford $200-300 a kid to play in a baseball league. So we get sponsorships, and these sponsorships sponsor the league, such as Anthem Blue Cross, the Water District. They come forward and allow us to pay for the fields, pay for the lights, uniforms, and so these kids can play baseball. The officers, Bolton Area Command coach, we had 7 officers coach this year out of 13 teams, and they're very involved. They put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and mentor these kids. They do a mentorship program through Police Athletic League. So it's not just only baseball, they're going through a curriculum to mentor these kids for life. So you hear stories from the officers that say, oh, it was pretty cool when I showed up to a call and I see a kid that's on my team. So the kid is more comfortable now because the officer coming is his coach.
On September 5, 2019 at 5:48 a.m., Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers Vasquez and Campbell initiated a traffic stop of Byron Williams for a minor traffic infraction. 2 hours later, Byron Williams was pronounced dead by officials at Valley Hospital. How do we move forward as a community to prevent further loss of life?
But we also have to take a look at, what happens when there is, body camera footage that is intentionally manipulated. There has to be accountability when that happens as well. And all of that is outlined in the 2017 bill that was passed, Senate Bill 176 as well. So it wasn't just that there was, a mandate by the state to allow for these cameras to be worn, but it also outlines how they should be worn, what happens when, there is manipulation or intentional misuse of the camera, and so on. So with evaluating, certain incidents, we have to make sure that, we take a hard look at how are we going to continue to legislate in a way that provides more accountability and transparency for the public.
And I think that we're at a stage where there needs to be a collaborative approach to what this amended policy looks like. And I think community needs to be involved in what that policy looks like. I don't think it should be done in a vacuum. And so I think it should definitely be a stakeholder meeting that's a more collaborative approach. Talk about what this looks like, because if it's constitutional policing, then that means it has a benchmark, right? It has a standard. It has a legal standard, number one. And so whatever that legal standard is, that needs to be the foundation, and then the community perspective of the community policing goals that they have needs to be the second layer on top of that in order to establish the amendment to the policy so that community feels safe, everyone feels protected, and it's balanced on all sides.
It's a layered approach, and we tried to address that this past legislative session with AB 478, addressing training for racial profiling, improvements in training for implicit bias recognition. And it also will take police agencies and police officers. You can have as many cameras as you want to, but if you know you have a bad officer on your department, if my partner is doing something he shouldn't be, then I have an obligation to call him out on that as his partner or her partner. And if they choose not to change their ways, then I too have an obligation to let our supervision know. Because as a police officer, we have to police ourselves first. And we are tasked with the care and custody, and our job is for protection and service to this community, so we have to be held at a higher standard. So we have to hold each other at a higher standard and be willing to say, this person shouldn't be on the department. And then finding those ways to remove that person if they are not meeting the standards of that department, morally, socially, physically. And someone had said, well, Metro's just hired a lot of racist officers, and I beg to differ. Metro's hired a lot of great people. And sometimes someone slips through the cracks that may not meet all those obligations that we feel our police officers should meet. Then we have an obligation, those in the police department, to do that self-policing, to get rid of that person. Because it takes one bad apple to make the news to make everybody else look bad.
Understanding implicit bias, aka implicit social cognition. Implicit bias refers to the attitude or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner.
It's not just one issue or one event that we have to address. As legislators, we have to have the foresight to see where we're going, and we have to have the knowledge of history to know where we've been. So with saying that, we have to look at, how our body cams are being used. We have to look at the procedures and policies that are in place. We have to look at, what are the psychological evaluations that are happening pre-hire. What is happening, once you're hired? What is happening once you are assigned to your area command? What are the trainings that are in place that are implemented by the captains of these area commands? So there's a lot of work to be done. I feel like we are further away from the past, and we are closer to more solutions. And there is no silver bullet. We just have to continue to do the work collaboratively with Metro, with the community, all talking to one another to come up with the best policy possible to improve the average quality of life for everyone in our city and everyone in our state.
I support police, but I also want to support the community and constituencies that are in pain.
If a law's been broken, it doesn't matter who broke the law, what their title is, what job that they hold. If someone breaks the law, then whatever the remedies that our state statute said for that, the crime that's been committed, then it needs to be applied fairly and equitably, no matter who that person is.
The same treatment that I would expect, number one, fairness, equal application of the law, and I do mean equal application of the law as written. And if there's a crime, that there's a statutory description that fits that crime, and if it would be applied to me, then it needs to be applied to them.
We are much closer than what we have been in the past. And I think we're, still a few conversations away from, being at a place to where we can respond in a way to where not only the public feels good, but also the department knows that it is responding to the trainings that are being put in place by the area commands. And speaking specifically to this area command, Bowdoin Area Command, which had a significant decrease in the amount of incidents. I think that we're moving in the right direction, and although we're not where we want to be, we're almost there.
Time and time again, you hear from people within the community, what's my elected officials doing? They're not standing up for me. Why am I electing these white people to go to Carson City? Our job is to make policy makers. We do not run businesses. Some people may know there's policies within privately run business. We don't run a business. We don't run a police department. And we're not an advocate for a specific group. If we're going to be an advocate, our advocacy is for state of Nevada, for all of the residents of the state of Nevada, no matter who they are. And our job is a policymaker. And when something does go wrong, it's our job to look at that policy and see how we can make improvements to it. Oftentimes, you may not see us on a street corner waving a sign and yelling and screaming. We're in the back hallways and offices talking to those members, whoever they are, involved in that situation to come to a conclusion, because that's what our job is. We work 24/7, although we're only in session 120 days every other year. We work for this community 24/7.
But what I do know is that it is going to take a collective, and it is going to take us as a community to stop sitting on the sidelines waiting for somebody to give us something, waiting for somebody to do something for us, and then be proactive versus reacting to everything that takes place to us. We are victims, but we don't have to continue to be the victims. We can exercise our rights by not just registering to vote, but we go to the polls and we put people in office that's going to fight for us. Because our commissioners are the ones that dictate the police department, our county commissioners. So we've got a lot of ways in which we can use our power. And that power is not just given to a few of us, it is given to all of us. But it's predicated upon the fact of how many of us is willing to step out there and put in the time to use that power. I will speak on one of them that we do not talk a lot about, which is a big elephant in the room for me, is that we can constantly talk about how others are oppressing us as a people, but we never want to put the mirror up to ourselves and talk about how we oppress each other. And we oppress each other more than the oppressor could ever oppress us. We talk about the killings that the policemen do, but we don't talk about the killings of which we're doing to each other on a regular basis. And not just in the Las Vegas community, but across this country. We talk about the school system, on how they're not educating our children. But then we can look within the homes and we won't talk about how we are not educating our children. And so our theme for this year is that the change you want to see begins with me. And if we want to see things different in this community, then we have to be somebody different and we have to do something different. And I think the NAACP is the oldest organization around. Come and be a part of us and support us in what we're doing.
The pulse for us right now as ministers is unifying us as leaders, encouraging our people to become more actively involved in matters before things like this happen. And so behind the scenes, we are encouraging each other to become more visible. We are encouraging each other to make sure that we're studying the facts, and even when we're at events, that we're not speaking from emotion and feelings, but we're speaking from facts. So we are encouraging each other behind the scenes to become more unified than we've been in a long time, especially when it comes to social activism. We have to become not afraid to lose to win. And I see us at a point right now as a community where the focus is on winning. We're not willing to give up anything in risk. So for me right now as a social activist, there are some questions that I want answers for, and I do understand as I make this transition in my life, I may lose some things. But in order to serve the people, I've yet to see a leader in history that ever won without losing first.
Especially for young people, it's important for the younger generations to see that you can still have fun and be young and youthful, but also be willing to give your life. I'm willing to live my life and I'm willing to give my life if it means making sure that those who are with me and those who will come after me can live in a world where the Byron Williamses will never exist and will never happen in any community, not just black, but brown, white, poor, whoever, whatever demographic you come from. I'm doing what I'm doing to make sure it doesn't keep happening. I don't want to keep having to march 10 years from now.
I'll tell you that I've met most of my individuals and people that I call friends and community members through positive interaction because of the amount of community activities and events that we attend. I have a community-oriented policing team, or COP team, that is completely dedicated to community events, and we do at minimum 2 events a month. Not to mention the events that come up last minute, but and that includes the Bolden Little League, coaching, and those officers, mind you, they do that on their own time. They are not compensated, and they provide their services because they actually care about impacting youth, and specifically in this community. And I know that you're well versed in Bolden Little League, and you know we've taken that from 6 teams to well over double that, from 60 some odd children to well over 187 or 86, I believe. Don't quote me. But that's a significant impact on an age group that absolutely needs it.
Right now, I'm researching an answer. I do not want to hurt the church and jeopardize the 501c3 status, but at the same time, I don't want to hurt and jeopardize the voice that God has given me for His people. So I'm researching that right now to find out, how do I be both people? I'm hoping our humanity will speak louder than our affiliation. And I'm hoping right now men and women will just speak to each other in their respective circles and to take a page from our brother Spike Lee. Let's really do the right thing. That brother couldn't breathe. I don't care his background, I don't care his criminal history. The man couldn't breathe, which means at that point, somebody needs to administer help, whether it's CPR, whether it's calling for backup. We're just talking humanity. If I'm walking down the street and I hear a man that he can't breathe, I don't care. If there's a light not working on his bicycle, I don't care the color of his skin. We have a human being that can't breathe. And so that's my personal question for those who have been hired to protect and serve me. How do you respond to that? That's all I want to know. Just tell me how you respond to that. I understand the laws. I understand laws may have been broken. I understand somebody may have fled the scene. But at the same time, we have a human being saying they can't. I want to see us fight for one justice. I want to see us fight for one law.
We're allowing them to throw money at our families and to walk away. We're allowing them to scare us like they've been doing, and they're getting away. That's the reason why it's not out there, and that's the reason why no one's talking about it. Because they're either scared or they've gotten paid not to even bring it back up. The Williams family is asking, please come out, because we cannot do this by ourselves. It truly takes a village, and we're going to need everybody to have our back.